All right. Happy Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are welcoming back onto the program Alan Walton. He is the founder of SpyGuy and anointed by Tim Ferriss himself, the prototypical 4-hour work week case study. So today, we're going to talk to him about how he's applying AI in his business and personal life. He's one of these founders who's taking personal responsibility, digging into AI, and even building some apps to help him get better visibility on his business and to make some pretty sizable interventions in his personal life too. He's also an expert at points hacking. So we're going to talk about how you can fly business class and first class every time you fly. At the end, we will discuss briefly Alex Hormozi's incredible book launch this past week and just give some first reactions to it. Probably worth a whole episode. What a remarkable day in internet marketing that was. Speaking of remarkable days, I have to say, I have just a few things at the top here. DCBKK is exactly 9 weeks away. If you don't know, hundreds of location independent founders, listeners of this podcast, fly to Bangkok, spend time in a ridiculously affordable 5-star hotel. We share openly, we share generously, we help each other out. We're all globally minded. We're all qualified. You have to apply and be reviewed by our team. If you're curious about whether you qualify, throw your hat into the ring, apply to the DC, talk to somebody on the team, see if it's for you. But if you're looking for people that are doing this thing and understand your language and what you're up to, I just can't think of a better room to be in than DCBKK. It can be a catalyst for a great year, for a complete change in what you're up to. And at a minimum, you will meet some incredible people. So I'm looking forward to spending time with so many of you in Bangkok, just 9 weeks away. So I know many of you are kind of on the fence. You run a location independent business. If you can carve out some time to make it to Bangkok in 9 weeks, I think it will be well worth your time. Just to know handfuls and handfuls of people, to have their number, to know what they're up to share information. It's a magical week for so many of us, and the team's energized. So many of the members are energized. People are booking their travel, booking their rewards points trips. And I think so many of us are just really, really excited for this year's DCBKK. So I just wanted to mention that on the podcast. So one final thing I wrote down here, I just wanted to mention, because over the last few weeks, I've had a lot of calls with members, and typically I'm getting calls, people write me when something really good's happening, like an opportunity, something really bad's happening, a big challenge or an obstacle. And what I've noticed is that as founders, we often know the thing that we have to do, to get over the next obstacle. And we just often avoid it. And I wrote down these 2 words. I was just trying to come up with a theme across these calls. And the 2 words I wrote down were confidence and clarity. And so with that thing that you need to do to take your business to the step that you would like to take it to, do you have the confidence to do it? Do you have the clarity around what that thing is? And I find that you can kind of start with one or the other. Like if you get a little bit of confidence, like you call somebody, you get pumped up, that can help you take action and then get some clarity. Also, if you get some clarity, if you write it down, you really define the problem, that can help give you confidence. The reason I bring this up is, man, you had clarity and confidence when you started the business. You had clarity and confidence when you brought in your first team member, and so on and so forth. You've piled up a bunch of wins. But at some point, for most of us, this can get exhausting. We just get burnt out over time. And it's like, well, you start to reach out and look for answers from anywhere, from a new partnership. It could be from a guru. It could be from a big book launch. Like maybe there's an answer out there somewhere. And I guess the theme of the last few weeks for me is like a lot of us have a sense for what the answer might be, but we're just exhausted at facing this stuff. And, when I'm on these calls, I'm just kind of like, well, this is why we get paid the big bucks. This is the path we have chosen. And the worst thing that can happen is when we outsource this job to somebody else. And I think the good news is that we get to choose our cadence on when we intervene to take on the big challenge or to unwind or to define or to build up the confidence and the clarity to step in and to make the change that we know needs to be made, or to make the push that we know needs to be made. And so I found over my career, like a lot of the most talented entrepreneurs, they have a lot of energy for this. Maybe their cadence is on a daily basis. Maybe for some of us, it's weekly or quarterly or even annual. But I just want to mention this theme of just clarity and confidence about the big challenge or the big push in the business must, I think, necessarily always arrive back on our desk. And to see that as our job to embrace it again and to see it as a privilege and an opportunity and part of the path we've chosen. And I think the biggest challenges come when we avoid that challenge or we outsource it to somebody else. I get it. Like, you ran the business for some years, you got a bunch of people involved. There's people lobbing in answers and solutions from all different directions. But at the end of the day, that clarity and confidence will come back to us. It's our job. And hopefully, you can come to DCBKK and get some phone numbers and you can call another founder. You can say, hey, you got 20 minutes where I can try and get some clarity and or confidence around this murky challenge that I know I need to take on. And I've just got the energy right now. I want to take it on. I feel like that is the founder's job. That's what we've signed up for. And if you're listening to this right now, I just want to encourage you to take it on, because that's what I see correlated with success over all the years. It's like, I'm either going to have some confidence today or I'm going to have some clarity, but I know that it sits on my desk. That is my job. I can't outsource it. So there you go. Without further ado, everybody, here is my conversation with Alan Walton. Alan, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to have you. So maybe you could just start us off with like letting us know what you're up to, like now in 2025. What are you working on? What are you passionate about? And then we'll get into the AI stuff.
Yeah. So still have my main business, which is SpyGuy. Started that about 11 years ago. It's an e-commerce business, Shopify only. We sell surveillance products, basically. And on the personal side of things, I had a house fire last November, and I've learned a lot about the insurance and home building industry that I thought I'd never have to know. And AI has definitely helped me a lot with navigating this new experience. And I shared some of that in Barcelona.
So how much are you using AI for like SpyGuy and your business stuff? And you also do rewards booking as a paid service. How much are you using it personally? Like, what's the breakdown right now?
On the business side of things, so I am using it, and I'm probably not using it enough. I'm trying to get into the habit of using it more for things. But lately I've been using it for business strategy. So we have a lot of buyer personas, I did the story brand exercises when that book originally came out, mapping customer journeys, like who's our customer, like what's their problem, how can we help them? Uploading that into AI so that it understands my business and can help me write content that appeals to those types of people. I can connect directly to my Shopify store, and instead of going into like the reporting section, I can ask it questions about sales volume on certain things, have things improved, have things decreased, like does it notice anything just in general, and have it analyze and run the numbers.
Does it notice interesting stuff?
Kind of. I think if I knew how to prompt it better, then I could get a lot more out of it. Recently, I built an app, the inventory forecasting app that I've used the last couple of years. They got acquired by an ERP, which is way overkill for me. And so I was looking at some alternatives that were out there, and they're probably like $200 a month, basically. And I was like, I wonder if I can like vibe code a forecasting app, and hopefully it's good enough to where I actually don't run out of inventory, because that'd be really bad for my business. And so I've spent roughly $200 this month. And I say this month, it's actually, I probably used it all like in the span of like a 24-hour period, but I was able to successfully make an app that is pulling all the inventory numbers from my company, using like a weighted average, I guess you could say. So it'll look at like the last 60 days, 30 days, and the last 7 days of sales, and then tell me exactly when I'm going to need to order inventory again. And so
Interesting.
maybe saved a couple $1,000, assuming this thing works correctly, which it seems to.
Okay, so this is exactly why I wanted to talk to you about the AI stuff, because I think a lot of these common sense use cases, we are starting to get the wheels greased. Like you talked about coming up with the story journey of your customer. What's the brand of that book?
Yeah.
And
Story brand. It's by Donald Miller, who I guess is, a big marketer. And this was the book that was kind of passed out like 7 or 8 years ago, just to really hone in on who your clients are and what their problems are and mapping out their journey. Like, I guess they take the hero journey framework and then apply it to your business. So your business is not the hero, the customer is, and your job is just guide them along the way. And so they have a whole framework for navigating that customer journey and speaking to those individual client profiles, I guess. So like we sell to law enforcement, we sell to regular everyday people who have some type of problem going on in their life, business owners, private investigators. All of those guys have different thoughts running through their head, different problems, different questions, and are looking for different products. And so we can take those story brand guides or whatever they call it, and then give those to AI. And then now AI knows who our customers are and can help us tailor like our messaging.
this is interesting because like on last week's episode, Sean Markey said, one of the ways we're adjusting to LLM search is instead of like a key term, you have like a way of speaking about something. And so now instead of having an ICP or just, sort of like optimizing for one specific ideal client profile, which it takes a lot of work for people to define that and then change their copy and stuff. Well, now you could potentially create 7 profiles where you're talking about a hero's journey for each of these potential customers and then creating ways into your brand for each of them. So that's pretty cool. So I feel like a lot of us are getting the wheels greased towards this kind of AI usage. For example, like one of my favorite ones is the deep research tool on ChatGPT. If you're listening to this right now and you're like, what is Dan talking about? It is like, if you just click plus on ChatGPT, it gives you different options. And one of them is deep research. And just do a deep research query of your niche. If you haven't done it yet, it's really interesting to see it'll go away for like 5 or 10 minutes and it'll come back and it'll like give you an industry landscape that is as sophisticated as if you paid thousands of dollars to a researcher to do it.
Yeah, I did that on all the major AIs because I wanted to see like how much overlap was there, like who noticed something that the other AIs didn't, how am I appearing to the AIs, and who are my competitors? Who does it think my competitors are, at least? Like the report that it spat back at me, it was like there were several competitors on there that I didn't really even know about, and I was like, why are these guys on the list? Or I do know about them, but they're way smaller than me, and I'm not listed on these things. It's very interesting when you start asking all the different AIs what it thinks about your business, because they all come back with something slightly different.
I think where you've taken it to the next step is that you are building things. So you just gave an example of you've built like essentially an inventory forecasting tool. You have another example where you've scraped information for personal use. But I feel like what you've done as a non-technical person is now you're going to these tools and you're essentially building the solution that you need. So how do we get started doing this? And what was your path to doing so?
Yeah, my path kind of started with Nat Eliason, who's been on this podcast a number of times, and I've followed him for like the last 10 years on X, and some of the courses that he's put out, really good content. He was a guy that kind of started sharing the vibe coding stuff online, but I didn't even complete the whole course. I only did like the first module, but it got me really excited. And I don't know anything about programming at all other than a simple like HTML hello world website that I did 20 years ago when I was in high school. But Nat was like, okay, you don't really have to know anything. Download Cursor, do these few little things, and let's just make a Pomodoro timer. And he shows you how to do it in Cursor, and you don't have to have any technical knowledge whatsoever. And once I saw that the Pomodoro timer was working, I was like, wow, this is really cool. But it's also really ugly. Like, can I make this a little bit more attractive? Can I make it more interesting to look at? And, you just go into Cursor and you're like, hey, this doesn't look very good. Like, can you change the colors? Can you make this button bigger? And it would do all of that. And that started opening up like all the different possibilities about what I might be able to do in Cursor. And so started out with Cursor, watched a few YouTube videos. It really doesn't take all that much.
What is Cursor and what is vibe coding?
Oh no.
Because here's what I'm trying to get over, this hump of, I feel like myself and a lot of founders are basically like, that's all what engineers do. But what I'm noticing is that it's not necessarily the engineers who are embracing vibe coding. So just explain from your perspective, what is vibe coding?
Big questions, Dan. I guess, man, we need to pull up the actual definition for vibe coding, because the guy that came up with it on X, it was a good definition. He was basically like, look, the code sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't, but it works well enough. And I could just chill and I can have my drink and listen to good music, and I can kind of build something that works without having to really understand all of the details about how or why it works. It just kind of does. And so Cursor, if I were going to define it, I install it on my Mac. It's just an app, and it basically looks like just a blank interface with like a chat line on it. And I guess they call it an agent. And so I can talk to this little chatbot, and I could say, hey, I want to build this. Let's get started. And you could be as specific or unspecific as you want. Like say, hey, I just want to build a basic website for my personal use, just to share blog posts. Or you could give it a huge amount of context. So you could say, hey, look, I want to build an app, and it's going to do these 4 things. And the most important thing is this one specific item I think is the most important. And I want you to build this app for me. And it will lay the framework, and it'll write all the code, and it'll tell you like, hey, does this look good? Yes, no. Like, what do you want me to change about it? And then you can ask questions about the code that it wrote. Like, hey, did you think about these details? Or you forgot this feature. And it'll be like, oh, you're absolutely right. I did forget about that feature. Let me go ahead and add that in there. That's a key feature. I'm glad you mentioned it.
So vibe coding is a workflow where developers use AI assistants to generate, refine, and debug applications through conversation. The approach emphasizes natural language interaction, iterative refinement, and focusing on desired functionality rather than writing code line by line. So my question then is, I want to hear about like specifically what you've done thus far. And okay, I get that you can like write this thing in Cursor, you can have a convo and an app spins up. But then how do you deploy it and get it to work when it has to have a conversation with other things like your financial information? Would you just download the information down into where you're running the app, or would you do the opposite and upload the app into your system?
I can't help but think that if I were a developer, I could explain this a little bit better. But I guess that's the point of vibe coding. Like, you can just kind of figure it out. If I were going to use Cursor, I wouldn't really know how to make an app that would connect to my Shopify store. So I moved to Replit. It's a cool tool. Basically, it's just in the web browser, although you could download a Mac app. And it's like Cursor in that you could tell it exactly what you're trying to build, and then it will create all the files and everything like that. But it will also host it. So if you want other members of your team to be able to use it, it has that capability. And it also keeps track of your API tokens. So if I wanted to build this inventory app, I would go into Replit and I'd try to give it as detailed of prompt, I guess you could call it, or just an outline of what exactly it is I'm trying to accomplish, giving it as much context as possible right from the get-go. Because once you get something going, if you don't give it all the details up front, then you're having to add those back in later on. And then that's when you start dealing with code that is like outdated. Like it starts to just spiral out of control. So when you give it the most context in the beginning as you can, it'll make a better app. And so I would tell it, hey, I need you to be able to pull this information from Shopify. And it would actually go in and tell me, hey, these are the different APIs that we need access to. So you're just going to go into Shopify and you're going to hit the add bin, and then you're going to build a custom app, and then you're going to give us the permission to read your orders so that we can analyze the sales velocity and predict when you actually need to place these orders. So it's connecting to several different APIs in my Shopify store. It can read what's going on there, and then it can give analysis and recommendations through the app that I built.
And why do this versus get like random consumer SaaS? I'm sure there's Shopify tools that provide this kind of forecasting.
I mean, there are a few different reasons. So some of these tools, they want to get paid based on your store's revenue, right? So just because I make a certain amount of money, they want to charge me like 4 times as much as if I were making less money for the exact same product. I do think that I'm going to save money on this, several $1,000s a year, assuming that this app works correctly, which it seems to be able to do just fine. And also, some of these apps still don't have month-to-month pricing. They want you to buy annual licenses, which if I end up making the wrong choice and I don't realize until a month later, that kind of sucks.
Makes sense.
Also, I can tailor it specifically to my store's needs. So maybe there's a bunch of data that would be useful for the forecasting app to have, but the one that's off the shelf or in the Shopify App Store, it doesn't factor those details. And so I can make an app now that considers all of that. And finally, like the usability. So I just fed it the Shopify Polaris design framework. So when I started building the app, I said, hey, I just want you to follow the design guidelines created by Shopify themselves. And so now my app looks like it's native to Shopify, or everything's laid out exactly like it would be if it were like a native, like integrated directly into Shopify.
So as a founder, you've got like a million things to do. How much time do you think you're going to be spending coding custom solutions in AI in the coming years? Because I guess like for me, coming from Barcelona, the thing that shocked me the most was like how little y'all were delegating AI. Of course, everyone is delegating it. Everyone's like trying to inspire the team to use AI. Do you think that eventually you'll figure it out what it means for your company and then people on your team are going to do it? Or do you think that you'll continue to work directly with AI more and more into the future?
I think that there's a lot of time up front, like right now, trying to understand exactly what's going on and how this works, and then how it could be useful to the company. And as the founder, you're going to be more interested than I think anyone else on the team is. I feel like maybe as a founder, we have our ear to the ground and we know that something's going on and we need to have a good understanding about it. And once you spend this time, like it was a lot of upfront work, understanding, just getting into Cursor and getting into Replit and understanding what exactly is going on. And once you kind of understand it, you start to realize the possibilities for the company.
What are some like case studies out there in the world or stories that you've heard of uses of AI that you're interested in or inspiring to you?
You probably need to get Catherine on the show, Catherine Lavery. So she built a tool in Claude Code. It just makes me look like a joker by comparison, because now she could just open up Claude and it's connected to her Shopify store and all of her all of the apps that she uses, and she can just do all this crazy stuff like edit her Shopify themes, immediately set everything on sale, change banners on the homepage. It's really pretty cool.
Amazing. Let's move on to travel and points. You run a side hustle or a business?
Kind of.
Yeah.
It was like an actual business that I launched right before COVID. Great timing. And eventually I, folded it to focus on my main company. Yeah.
I read an article the other day that said that the airlines in the United States do not make money flying passengers around. They actually rely on their deals with credit card companies to do so.
Yeah. There's a lot of money exchanging hands. The airlines will sell miles to the banks so that they can give away these huge sign-up bonuses and award people with these, huge sign-up bonuses that they can redeem for flights or gift cards or whatever it is.
It's kind of wild. Like, you got me onto a business class flight the other week, and I was like wondering, like, I bet like almost nobody bought this seat because I didn't buy my seat. I know the price of this stuff. I bet almost nobody bought their seat. And I looked around the web for this figure, and the last published report, according to ChatGPT, was like in 2012, where the number was like 14% of people actually pay cash for business or first class tickets.
That's crazy.
What do you think the number is?
From what I know about like points and miles is that they typically only release a few seats, like in business or first class, to be made available for people redeeming miles.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things I just want to ask you about is before we get into, how people can better optimize for more points and more business in first class without paying cash. I've noticed two things. First off, there's all these articles coming about the overpopulation of airline lounges. One article called it elite overproduction, which is this economic theory of we're creating too many people who want elite jobs and they want elite status, and there's just not enough space for them. And you're sort of seeing that as like a real case study in our airport lounges, which I noticed this somewhere around 5 years ago, that like the terminals started getting more luxurious than the lounges, with notable exceptions.
I mean, I haven't consciously thought about that, but I think you're right. At least at DFW Airport, which is where I take most of my flights, I have noticed that. Like, and the lines to get into the lounges now are just absolutely obscene. So unless you're getting lounge access with your business class ticket, like if you're trying to get into the Amex Centurion Lounge or the Sapphire Preferred Lounge, there's like really long lines. It almost makes it, not worth it to stand in those lines and get on the wait list.
There's another trick that Ian and I have been doing a lot lately, which is like gate upgrades. I wanted to ask you about this because I think we've done it like 3 or 4 times in the past few years, and it's worked every time, and the price has been really good. Essentially what we're doing is we're booking a flight, an international flight. We're showing up 2 hours in advance. We're walking into the premium line, and we're just saying we want to upgrade to premium. And they give us a price that is way less than if we would have bought a premium ticket. What's the deal?
Well, I don't know, personally. What's funny, though, is that you're actually going up to the counter and asking for that upgrade. I don't know too many people that do that. But I'm glad it's working for you, because I thought it only worked the other way, where the airline would say, hey, we have a bunch of seats available. Put in your bids to get upgraded. So that's a good tidbit. I'll have to keep that one in mind. You know more about this than I do.
A lot of us use rewards points. I've always been super frustrated with them, which is why I talk to you. I've always smelled a bit of a scam, like they're giving me these points. It's such a pain in the ass to refund them and to turn them into something useful. I'm just curious about like, what are some of the major trends in 2025, and how can entrepreneurs accumulate more points and ultimately more business and first class travel?
So first, I have to mention that you're the one who turned me on to this whole thing, because you had Eric from Abroaders on the podcast like 10 years ago. I didn't know anything about it 10 years ago. And so that was the gateway into this whole realm. In 2025, so things changed with COVID, right? So seeing a lot less availability to Asia, just simply because there's way less flights than there used to be pre-COVID. Also, there's a lot of information out there for people who want to take advantage of this game. And it comes down to several different things. So the first one is that there's all these people on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram Reels educating you exactly on how to do these things. And so it's ramping up the desire for all these premium cards with all these perks so that people can get the big sign-up bonuses and take that dream trip to Tokyo or whatever it is, Bahamas for a honeymoon. And so there's more people pushing in this space than there ever have been. Additionally, the barriers to entry have gone down quite a bit, because several years ago, we didn't have tools like Seats.Arrow, which I use every day. We didn't have these tools that would aggregate all of the award tickets that are available across all the different airline programs. If I wanted to go to DCBKK and get a ticket from Dallas to Bangkok, I would have to load like 11 different airline loyalty websites manually and do all these manual searches. And now you have these web scraper search engines that are just providing all of the results for anyone who's willing to pay $9.99 a month. And so as a result, there's just less availability because pretty much anyone can get an alert as soon as that, first class ticket becomes available to Japan. So I help Ian quite a bit with all of his tickets. And there have been plenty of times where I get an alert about something being available. I see it on the website. And then right when I finally get Ian on the phone so that we can book this thing, it's like gone. Like 4 minutes later, somebody's already booked it. So it's very competitive now. And so the keys are be flexible on your travel dates. So if you want to fly out there on the 25th, but there's a flight available on the 24th, I mean, you just need to go ahead and book it because there's no guarantee that the 25th one's going to become available. Ideally, you just wouldn't have a family that also needed to travel because it's really hard to get tickets for, 3 to 5 people in business class. A lot easier to get just a solo ticket or 2 people.
So the idea is that, in a sense, because of competition and ubiquity, and then people's increased competence in exchanging the rewards, because my sense is a lot of these rewards points that have been gathered over the years sit sort of dormant, right? People don't use them.
I think that people who get the points are typically redeeming them in the travel portal. At least that's my take after talking with tons of people. Many of them business owners, many of them just regular 9-to-5 people, teachers who want to travel. It seems like a lot of people don't know the rules of the game, and most people are just redeeming via the travel portal, which is actually like the worst way to redeem your points, in my opinion.
What is the travel portal?
So like if you go to American Express Travel or you log into Chase and you try to book directly like within the Ultimate Rewards portal, you're going to get the worst value possible. You get the best value by transferring out to Airlines. So moving your Chase points to United, moving your Amex points to Singapore Airlines.
Why is that?
Because they give you a flat rate in the travel portal. So let's just call it like 0.7 cents if it's the Amex portal, unless you have like the Amex Platinum card, or you could just say like with Chase, I think it's 1.5 cents. That's just like the flat rate that they give you when you redeem in the travel portal. And it can cost hundreds of thousands of points to redeem that way. Whereas if you were to actually look at the airline website like United, so the flight that I found for Ian, I guess, was 110,000 United points. So we moved his Chase points into United and it was only 110,000 points. If he had tried doing that through the portal, it'd probably be like 3 to 4 times as much.
Huh.
Yeah.
If there's such an advantage, then why do they allow it? So I'm suspicious of these big companies now.
Yeah. So when you're booking it through the Chase portal, you could pick the exact flights that you want, right? If you want this flight on this specific day at this specific time with no stops, right? You can go ahead and do that. But if you were going to book it on the United website, if you get the same type of ticket, it's going to be like, you would call that an anytime award. That's going to be like 250,000 miles if it's like a trip from the US to Asia. But they will have some flights that are 100,000 points instead. But those are called the Saver Awards, and those are few and far between.
I see. So that's what you're looking for.
It's on this specific day, on this specific time. You don't have any flexibility whatsoever. But we're going to give it to you at a really good deal if you're willing to accept it.
Gotcha. So the advantage essentially of like watching the market is that these deals pop up and you can move quickly on them. And then you've got 3 business class flights instead of 1 that fits your specific parameter. Okay. So then the final question is like about points accumulation. What are some tips right now? Because I think the idea of like signing up for new credit cards all the time is not really what most of us are doing. We're trying to like get the right card and accumulate correctly.
So what I would do is I would go to one of the AIs, and I would tell it what I'm spending money on in my business. So like if I run an e-commerce business, I'm spending a lot of money on online ads with Meta or Google. I'm spending money on postage, shipping, that type of stuff, maybe some inventory purchases and some SaaS, and then have it recommend a card for you. So like the Amex Business Gold Card is what it's going to tell you to get if you have an e-commerce business, because it'll give 4 points for every dollar that you spend on online advertising. That's going to let you accumulate points really super fast. Additionally, all of these cards have big sign-up bonuses. So Capital One, for example, I just got a card last week. It's the Venture X Business Card, and it has a 400,000 point sign-up bonus if I spend $300,000 in the next 6 months. Now, for some people, that's not really going to work. But if you have a high amount of spend, then you can totally do that. And then you can fly in business class for like quite a while afterwards, because it's a lot of points. And also, you're going to be getting a lot of points for the actual, not just the sign up bonus, but the actual stuff that you're spending money on. They have other cards out there, like the Amex Platinum card. They'll offer 250,000 points as a sign up bonus if you spend like $30,000 over the next 6 months, that type of thing.
Gotcha.
The big thing is make sure that you're putting your spend on the right card. So if you spend a lot on ads, then you're going to want to do 4X on the Amex Business Gold Card. But if you spend a lot on shipping, you would probably want to do the Chase Ink Preferred or the new Chase Reserve Business Card, because those give 3 points on shipping. A lot of people I talk to, they just put everything on their Amex Platinum card, and they're just getting 1 point on every dollar that they spend. And they could be earning points 3 to 4 times faster if they're just putting it on the right card. So
interesting.
That's what I would say. I would try to diversify so you don't have all your eggs in one basket. Like if you're spending everything on your Chase card, that's cool. You can transfer out to United. You can transfer out to, Air Canada or Air France. But there are other programs like American Express where you might be able to rack up points faster, and you get access to more transfer partners that Chase doesn't have access to. So it helps with your flexibility.
Interesting. If you're sitting at home, like 80% of our audience, Alan, is business owners, but the 20% are looking to start a business online or a side hustle, and they're probably wondering, like, why are you guys talking about this?
Why are we? Hard pivot from AI.
Yeah, I just want to mention, like, what I've noticed, because I've been in that situation too. Like, I was like a points naysayer, but what ends up happening as your business grows to like doing $500,000, $1 million and beyond in annual revenues, is that there is a sizable portion of reliable recurring expenses that you use credit cards to pay for because of the ease, because of the security and all that. And so what ends up happening, what I've noticed is, like, when I go to like conferences, that a meaningful percentage of the business owners that we spend time with, they never not fly business. They always fly business. And it's not because they're buying business class tickets. It's because of their Google ads. It's because of their Meta ads. It's because they're paying their contractors with credit cards. It's because they're paying agencies with credit cards. You name it. I've been around founders that they open up their wallet and they're like, no, I got to use this card for this one. I think the end result is that at a certain size of revenue, and maybe you have a guess or whatever, you eclipse that, and essentially you can fly business class indefinitely. And that's why we're talking about this.
Yeah. So I've not had to ever do an economy international flight in the last 10 years since listening to your podcast on this with Eric. It's an amazing tool. So I feel pretty strongly about this because I've seen how people are using these miles. So this is spend that you're doing already, right? You're going to be spending this money to run your business. It helps to know exactly, which credit card do I need to spend this on? What's the 80-20 on this? How can I make the most out of these quote unquote free points that I'm getting on my business? Additionally, it's great that your business can spend these points and then you could use them for personal reasons. You don't just have to use them for business trips or whatever. You can use them to fly out and visit family. I had a client back when I was running SpyGuy, and he had to get on a last minute flight from the US to India so that he could go visit his father before he died. And he sent me this big long email afterwards saying how much it meant to him to be able to arrive rested on a business class flight. If he had paid cash, that would have been an extremely expensive flight, like probably $6,000-$7,000 or something like that in business class. Who knows? And all of us entrepreneurs, we work way too hard, right? And I feel like this is like a form of luxury for us, that we can get on a business class flight and not have to stress about the next, 16 hours flying over the ocean.
Cool. Anything else to say on rewards points in 2025?
If you have any questions, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already my type of people, just reach out to me on X or email or whatever, and happy to answer any basic questions that you have.
Cool. All right. Final piece before we get out of here. Hormozi sells a gazillion books in a 9.5 hour reported launch. He launched his new book, Money Models, and absolutely everyone this week in the internet marketing space is talking about Alex Hormozi. I think it's kind of interesting because one of the things we were talking about is like the generational transition from gurus. For me and you, Tim Ferriss was our guru. You are the prototype 4-hour work week case study. I am the 4-hour work week acolyte. Like, you're so fascinated by everything 4-hour work week and how I can apply it. And it feels like the 4-hour work week message is not as resonant to the next generation of entrepreneurs, where I feel like in a way, 4-hour work week's like, you don't have to have your 9 to 5. Let's think about your values. Let's figure out how you can get enough money to fulfill your values. I feel like the next generation is a little bit more like, yeah, we get all that. Like, maybe we're not choosing careers based on what we like to do anymore. We're choosing careers and businesses based on how much money we can make. We take for granted the fact that I can go overseas and pay people less, or that I can work less and make more. Now what we need is systems to make the money. And I feel like Hormozi is delivering that. I'm curious as what your thoughts were watching the Hormozi launch and seeing all the responses to it this week.
So I didn't watch it live. I didn't really even know about it until the DC WhatsApp group was like, who else is watching this right now? And hearing about how it went on for like 6 hours or something like that. I'm peripherally aware of Hormozi. I did read his first book, which I thought was good. I think it was the $100 Million Offers book. I thought it was a good book. And I think he's an interesting guy. I think it's also interesting that it's not just him. It's also, is it his wife? I guess they're married, Leela, I think. And so they kind of have this like power couple thing going, and maybe he has the ultra masculine appearance and she is more tailored towards like the woman audience. And it seems to work really well because I know both men and women that are like really following the Hormozis. I did pull up the live stream because you could still go on YouTube and see what exactly went down yesterday. And it's interesting because I've seen this format before, where they have all of the little Zoom boxes up on the green screen showing you everyone that's watching the live stream, and having an individual speak and do like the hard sell on these online courses. It's all really interesting. I don't know how many people are just starting out and buying his stuff versus they're already like experienced business owners, because it seems like most of the people that I know that follow Hormozi, they already have like established businesses. Have you noticed that at all? Or does it seem mostly like they're new entrepreneur types?
I feel like you're right. The thing about Hormozi's career, I feel like a lot of these previous guru businesses, and I wasn't there for the genesis, but it's like Tim Ferriss or Napoleon Hill or Gino Wickham. You write this book and it's like, man, we put a lot into this book and it really took off. And so now we're going to sell stuff on the back of it. And these books now are interesting IP that these like credentialization and professional coaching companies and stuff, they pick up the books, they buy the rights to the book, and then they tack on this like course and coaching business on the back end. So it's really interesting to like watch Hormozi like sort of come out of the blue with a sack of cash, basically saying, I am like going full tilt at this. Like I see the broader opportunity over the next 5 years, and to like really create like a media brand that focuses on established entrepreneurs. I think what Hormozi did is he took this classic roadmap and he just executed it really nicely. So he knew, for example, that he needed to get out a gym launch at a certain kind of number so that he could put that number in front of everybody. He knew that he needed to make X number of investments in X number of companies in order to say 100 million, right? And then he knew that this information existed in the world, that it was very good. He's a student of the game, but that it could be repositioned for YouTube, for the contemporary founder. So I really enjoy a lot of Hormozi's content. And almost always you can find the source where he found that information and simply did it in a new format, and in many cases much better. He's a really compelling speaker. I think it's cool that he's polarizing, that he's getting a lot of discussion going. I think at the end of the day, like, if you need sales training, if you want to learn about leads, if you want to learn about offers, in some ways he has created better materials than the source materials itself. You know, you've got this guy who's a genuine business nerd, who's a student of the game, who's an excellent communicator, and he's cashed up and 100% focused on feeding you that message. And we just haven't seen quite anything like that. And the results sort of came through this week with selling millions of copies, I suppose, of his new business book. I understand why there's so much critique of Hormozi. I think part of the reason he isn't a little bit more transparent is, I think, like a lot of our stories, like when you go beyond like the big number, it's like a little bit more complicated and it's harder to communicate and spoils the message. But forget about that. Like, look at this framework. Isn't it inspiring to you? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is, yeah, it is inspiring. And so thanks for sharing it.
I think you nailed it with the repackaging, kind of. So these are all concepts that as internet marketers, we've been familiar with this stuff for 15 years, even beyond that for the older crowd, I guess.
Yeah.
And I want to know, is that why Hormozi rubs people the wrong way? So there was kind of a discussion about this in the WhatsApp group earlier. Like, why do some of us get rubbed the wrong way with Hormozi? Is it because like he's positioned himself as like a guru? Like, why does that make some of us like upset or like feel antagonistic towards him? And I can't say I know for sure, but it's just interesting to see, like, this is like the next phase in like the online marketing, go independent, go solo, build your company kind of thing.
Alan, this was great. Thank you, as always, for coming on the Tropical MBA podcast. The palm tree carpet is extended your direction anytime. So have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.